But Eric, it's awesome to see you, and it's great to have the subscribers back on. Apologies that we haven't done one of these in a while, guys. I see you out there in San Diego, Mike. You're an OG on here, so thanks for not forgetting about us. But man, it's Eric. It's great to get the party started with you. I mean, you don't need an introduction. This Buffalo Bills legend, Pro Bowler. You felt the magnetic pull to Eric in that locker room, man. The stories for day. You and Richie. There was either one of you guys. That's in the media. It was just like, all right, the work's done. Let's just shoot the bull a little bit.
I was gonna
but now
say,
you've joined the dark side.
yeah, I was gonna say if you wanted something inappropriate, you went right next door to Richie's locker. If you wanted something you could write about, come over to my locker.
Yeah. Richie, he pushed the boundaries a little bit. He did one of these, but we couldn't post it. He asked us not to share it anywhere. Understandably so for those who were on it, but no,
What
man.
went down? Well, I guess I can't ask.
Well, no, you can ask. Hey, it's well, I mean, hey, you could probably share some of the same stories, like Rex training camp, maybe throwing a few too many beers back during the week that he shouldn't, and then he got into God, the stuff. I'm trying to remember what he said and what he didn't. He got into the Jonathan Martin stuff like after the fact because we were actually hanging out down in Phoenix. I was there for another story. We were getting dinner. And that's when Jonathan Martin put out the Instagram post like threatening Richie's life, which was insane, and it was real. I mean, it was like Richie like went through the play-by-play of what went down. He left the restaurant right in that moment, took off, and I believe he said like the FBI got involved. He was on lockdown. Everything thankfully was okay, and
right, and that's where like when you see that all come out afterwards, you think maybe Richie wasn't, maybe he became the fall guy in Miami and they got him pretty good. But, I don't, and obviously Richie says some things that he wishes he could take back, but like, that was what, 2010, there wasn't a cancel culture. You could still like bust someone's chops and it was okay.
I mean, it's all in context, right? Like in a football locker room, I mean, it's, right. He said things he should not have said. This doesn't absolve like everything that, I mean, Richie would be the first to say that he is inappropriate and crazy and, whatever. But like in the context of a locker room, I mean, things are going to be said that you just would never say out in the real world. I don't know. It's
no doubt about
like
it. Part of the reason is because you're going to battle with these guys and you get so close that you're comfortable in those situations. But then when you have someone like Jonathan Martin, whose parents and his mom especially is a workplace harassment attorney, he apparently wanted to get out of football. Well, then Richie becomes public enemy number one, which, I mean, if you went through, I don't want people to start doing this, but if you went through every O-line group message throughout the league in that year, like when that happened, we were all goofing around like, oh my gosh, if they go through all of our texts, like our wives aren't even going to know us. Like just because it's, and I guess they weren't called memes back then, but it would just be like different pictures or whatever it may be, like, oh, so-and-so looks like whoever, they're probably ribbing me about bad Santa or something or other. It's like we ripped each other so hard that you could have canceled the Bills offensive line that year, I'm sure.
Exactly. It's like, I mean, and what kind of world do we want to live in when we're just sifting through everybody's private life all the time? And I'd love your take on this, like as somebody who kind of, I mean, Tom Brady and Richie, like when all the Washington email stuff kind of went down, I'm thinking like, okay, well, we got full reports, like the full investigation, everything that was found became public to everybody. But not this. Like this doesn't, because they're protecting people. Like it's selective.
Right. Yeah, I mean, to me, it seemed like just a pure. I heard it said like this. This isn't my original language, but a public assassination of Gruden. Like someone in the league office or someone that was intertwined in that trial decided we are going to take out John Gruden because you want to tell me that you went through everybody's emails and text messages and it was only Gruden, it was only him. But now, and as soon as they take out Gruden, then it becomes this literal act of Congress that now none of the other information from the case can be revealed. It's unbelievable.
600,000 emails, and he's the only one that was problematic.
Exactly.
Sounds reasonable.
That's the NFL though, right? I mean, they operate above the law, above what we would consider normal, and they're just gonna win. They always win. So, man. Well, anyways, Eric, just the way we kind of do these is we just shoot the bull and let people ask you whatever they want to ask if that's cool.
So,
but what are you up to these days? Like,
well,
how's
I was just
life?
gonna say, so this is just like an open Zoom.
Oh yeah, yep. It's just kind of a free for all. I don't really have many rules. It's just everybody is pretty cordial, and you know, I want to say, we had Allen Robinson on one, and there were a lot of people in there. And at that point, we kind of had to have a little, I don't know, raising of hands and whatnot. But for the most part, everybody can just fire away and drink some beers. Do you have something there? I know you were kind of contemplating between one or the other.
Who, me?
Hmm.
As far as what? Like what direction we're going?
No, you said you were telling me you were thinking between beer or tequila or something when we were
Oh
texting.
yeah. I went little tequila action. We got an ugly Christmas sweater party tonight. Probably drink a bunch of beer there. So I
What
figured
kind of tequila? Little Casamigos?
No, I was gonna mix it, so I did just Patron and soda and lime. I mean, my number one tequila. So I saw the question about bourbon. So I'm in bourbon country. I got probably, I don't know, 1,000 bottles of bourbon in my basement here. Hopefully no one has my address because what bourbon's worth nowadays. But anyways, I've gotten on a tequila kick, and for me, you don't feel as bad the next day. It's a cleaner buzz, but like my number one is Clase Azul, which now you can't find that anywhere. All right, guys, you guys can come here and say hi.
Daddy, I'm changing my ornament.
So this is Grace.
Hi.
No,
Hi.
Daddy's working, so we can't. Garrett, come say hi. All right. If you guys follow me on social media, you've seen this dude, but this is my mini me.
Hi.
I love it.
Garrett, who's your favorite football player?
Josh Allen. I can't believe
Did you hear that?
There it is. I love
Josh
it.
Allen. Are we gonna see him sometime soon? Hope so. Are we gonna beat the Patriots? Heck yeah, we don't lose to the Patriots anymore, do we?
No.
No. All right. You
What
guys-
does this do?
This is the microphone.
Oh.
All right, you guys go upstairs, okay? All right. Well, sorry about that. Yeah, so I've gotten on a big tequila kick lately, but now, like, you can't find Clase Azul anywhere. You can't find Don Julio 1942. Like, all the good tequilas now are all getting bought up, just like many of the bourbons and whatnot.
I can't believe how much bourbon's going for. Like I was telling you, it was with Wyatt Teller last week, and he doesn't have as much as you, but he had one Pappy, like a 12-year reserve, $1,600 for like a thin bottle.
Oh,
Unbelievable.
I did. Me and Richie split a barrel of Blanton's, and so I got maybe 120 some of those. We ended up paying $58 a piece for them when we did it. At my charity event in Buffalo, I auctioned off two of them, so you got both of them. I think it went for $3,000. I mean, it's nuts. It's insane. But like anything, if you can't get it, it's worth what anybody will pay for it. So, and then those are rare because they have like the sticker has me and Richie's face on it, so it's a little different. But even then, I'm like, I mean, I feel bad, but here you go. It's all the money's going to a good place.
It's true. Exactly. So yeah, what's your feeling on this weekend, Eric? I mean, everybody in Buffalo here, they're pretty worried. It's kind of I don't know, not quite gloom and doom, but I think a lot of fans are wondering like are the Patriots really done? Because
Yeah, I mean,
it sure looks like they're just recharging, reloading, and they're going to dominate for another 2 decades.
yeah, I mean, honestly, I was ready for the Patriots to be down for at least a few years. Like, how do we let Mac Jones fall to them at 16 and give them like their Brady replacement, perfect to fit into that Josh McDaniels offense? But regardless, I understand that everyone in Buffalo is maybe anxious about the game, but to be worried, like Buffalo's a favorite here. We got maybe the best roster in the league, and I understand that the last 4 games haven't been perfect, but that's mainly been turnovers. Turnovers is something that you can control yourselves. It's not like, and I understand Indy ran the ball down their throats, but they were able to run the ball down their throats because the Bills had 3 first-half possessions, and one of them was a 2-minute drill because of a fumbled kickoff return and an interception by Josh Allen, and you're out Starr, and you're out Tremaine in that game. Like, all those things considered, yes, you got the ball ran down your throat, but it was kind of the perfect storm. Going back and looking at some of that film, there was excellent play calls that hit Bills blitzes perfectly, and they were not checked. Like, I'm not giving Carson Wentz credit for those. Those were fortunately timed calls that just ended up working out perfect. All that being said, I'm not worried about Monday night. It's a huge game, especially when you consider that, you know, you got 2 games against New England that probably decide the division, and this is our one at home, so you need to get this one. But that being said, like, when you get those anxious feelings, like, that's what makes sports fun. Like, if you knew the Bills were going to go out and roll every single week, that's not fun. I was having a conversation with Terry Pagula before, I think it was the Jets game, because we just dropped the Jacksonville game. And he said, you know, I'm just a little bit nervous about this one. I said, Terry, that's what makes sports fun, bud. You know, that's what makes it fun. And so it's going to be an incredible atmosphere. Should be it's looking like a wintry mix for game time, so it'll be a ton of fun.
Wintry mix, but I feel like this team, I mean, that's kind of like the debate now with the new stadium. They're almost kind of built best for a dome, right? Like, does that really help? Maybe we're overthinking it here, but I feel like if it's windy and it's snowy and they're already calling for like hellacious conditions, kind of plays into the hands of the team that wants to run and play defense and has, you know, Mac Jones kind of caretaking things.
No, you're exactly right. You know, the way we're built right now, it seems like the windy games affect our downfield throwing, which allow those safeties to, even though they're in a 2 shell, to creep up because the deep ball's so hard to throw when that wind's whipping in the stadium. And it's almost like when you get on a golf course and you like throw the leaves up and or throw some grass up and you're like, wait, which way is it going now? I feel like it's swirling. That's the Bill Stadium. Like, the entire time you're out there, you're like, I know the flags are whipping that way, but it sure feels like it's kind of blowing this way. And so it can be tough to judge. But, you know, looking at the matchup, I mean, the Patriots have a good run game, and they don't get run production from the quarterback. Now, they will get the receivers involved on some jet sweeps and whatnot, but what do they average? 4.1 yards per carry on the season? Like, that's not a daunting number. What they've done lately is, though, they've just, you know, Mac Jones doesn't throw a lot of incompletions, and they've just kept the chains moving, and then they've been forcing an astronomical amount of turnovers. They forced turnovers per possession the most in the league. So you hold on to the football against them, you make them try to start making some plays, you get up on them early. I think it's a game that the Bills could smoke them. Now, you fall behind, let them play clock control, and you don't make the plays offensively, you turn the ball over, that could be a different story. But, you know, I'll roll with Vegas on this one. I think the Bills are going to get them. I think the Bills have more experienced playmakers, you know, and you know, for the longest time, the Patriots had all the guys that were part of this winning culture. Well, the coaching staff for the Patriots had been a part of it forever, but not a lot of the guys had key positions for them.
Man, those are great points all around. I know, and also, obviously, everybody can just kind of shout out whenever, but if you want to raise your hand on the side there too, I forgot we got that. Joe's got his hand up. What's happening, Joe?
Hey, what's up, man? Hey, Eric, how you doing today?
What's up, dude?
Hey, not much. Question: You may have alluded to this on a podcast with Tyler, and I was a little bit confused. So maybe if you want to air this out, what happened in your retirement speech? Like, I'm still confused to this day, like why you couldn't say you retired and all that stuff. Like, what happened with that? And is there like a little bit of a disappointment for you that you never got like that retirement? Like, you can thank Fitz, you can thank Stevie Johnson or your family, because that was like the weirdest thing. I remember watching that on like at work, and I'm like, what is going it was like, I can't talk, goodbye. I'm like, you know, what happened with that, like behind the scenes, like on that day? And you know, and if you wish you could still have that. I mean, maybe you could have it. You should do a Zoom like retirement press conference, and
there we go.
We get everyone.
Perfect.
We get Fitz on here. We get Ty to ask you questions, and it's a retirement Zoom. But like, anyways, yeah, what happened that day?
That's not a bad idea. And if this was still COVID times, I'd be down for that. But I'm ready for in-person gatherings. So let's do like a party at a bar or rent something out. But
Yes.
no, I'm with you. I mean, one of the disappointments of my career is that I truly never got to kind of celebrate it at the end because for 5 months I couldn't say I was retiring because then I'm no longer injury disqualified, which would have affected a lot of money. And I signed a contract extension before the season. I would have lost out on all my guaranteed money, all my injury guarantee if I was retiring, but I was physically disqualified. At the very last second, the NFLPA got very concerned that anything I said that the Bills could use that against me, which I have a great relationship with the Bills and still do. I did then and I still do to this day. But the NFLPA's biggest concern, and I understand completely, because it truly is a business, that if I said anything that like thank yous, well, that sounds a lot like you're retiring. If I would have accidentally said retirement, if I would have said, I'll no longer be with this organization, whatever I would have said could have been used against me. So they basically scripted up something that I could say just because this press conference was there. And honestly, if kids that our foundation had worked with in the past, if kids hadn't taken off school and come out there for this, and if family and friends didn't fly in from all over the country, I probably would have just canceled it. But I felt so bad. I felt like maybe we should just give them something. Looking back, we should all just went to the big tree, let the kids come in too, and just had a good time in there. But at the time, it felt right to do it, and it was very unfortunate. It was extremely disappointing for me though, because not that I had anything in my notes to say that I'm retiring. There was a lot of thank yous though. And so for me, and it's kind of a running joke in our household too, like when my wife's actually going to throw me a retirement party, but it is what it is.
Can I ask, why couldn't the Bills, and again, I'm not a lawyer or anything, why couldn't they just send the Players Association something that says like, hey, we'll void that out of the contract so he can say this? Like, why didn't they do that? And also, did they ever approach you? Because this was 2018, right? That's when you retired.
Yeah, early 2018.
Yeah. Did you at all think about asking them, hey, can we do this 6 months later? Like we do a real one, like, you know, I mean, whatever. Like, I mean, Fitz has money. He can fly out again, or something like that. Like, why didn't they do that? And did you think about like, hey, let's just do this for real this time, 6 months from now?
No, and maybe I should have. I sometimes I don't have a lot of nerve in those situations to ask, and since they didn't offer, I didn't bring it up. But that's a great question, Joe. Honestly, about why the Bills didn't do anything, and the main reason. And I've never been asked this before, and I've been asked a lot of questions about it. So congrats, that's a great question. And basically, the NFLPA did try to get them to sign something. The Pagulas were not in town, and Brandon Beane was like, "Look, it's not my money. Like, I can't lawyer here. Like, I am not able, like, this press conference, we're already late, and I'm not like the one that can make the decision to sign something like that. Like, we would need Overdorf, the contract guy. We would need the Pagulas. We would need, I think Russ Brandon was still with the team. Himself, like, he's like, that's not practical in this moment. But that's an awesome question.
It's such a great question because it's like, I would think that's an easy signature for Terry Pagula to sign. Like, it's like it shouldn't even be a debate. It shouldn't be a discussion. Like, if they were to ever try to jip you out of that money, I mean, the uproar, there'd be people at the stadium in pitchforks. It just, it was so cringy. It put you in a terrible spot. It put the team in a weird spot. And you never had that moment to celebrate your career, your life. Like, I feel like there's celebrations for everybody in every sport, every level now. And you're a dude who spent a decade losing in Buffalo, going through all the brutal years. You bust through. You're a big reason that the team finally busted through, and you don't get that moment. I think everybody was kind of feeling for you in the city.
I know. Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate those words too. I always think, like, maybe if one day I could make the Ring of Honor, like, that would, we could do something like that. I did make it into University of Louisville's Hall of Fame right here. There's that guy. And
Nice.
And when I went in their Hall of Fame, now there wasn't people from all over the country like there was for that, or like there would be if it was a true retirement deal. But I did get to say some thank yous and whatnot there, which was special.
Yeah, that seems like a good compromise. Yeah, just put my name up there. We'll no hard feelings. I got to think that happens then.
I know, in like I would have played football for as long as I could have, and so who knows where my career would have ended up. I'm not saying I would have been a Hall of Famer, but for me,
Yeah.
probably like the pinnacle at this point would be Ring of Honor. I'm trying to think of what else there would be beyond that, like as far as athletic achievement. Probably the Ring of Honor in Buffalo. We'll see how that all shakes out one day.
Start the campaign, Tyler.
Well, we got to have the retirement party. I like that. Maybe we do it at HBC. Get Monas involved, and hey, we could do it.
Yeah, where's Monas? I thought he was gonna be on here.
I know it. Yeah, he's traveling. I think he's going to see family or something this weekend. So we'll give him hell. We'll make him feel guilty
Nice.
for sure. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, just let it rip.
Is
I got a
Monos going to
question.
be? Is Monos going to the XFL with Whaley and Russ?
I'm not at liberty to answer these questions at this time. So
Okay.
actually, I honestly don't know, but I think there's probably some dots to connect there, right? Like,
They were
I
like
got a
the Three
question
Amigos
for
for
you,
a while.
Eric.
yeah.
I got a question for you, Eric. How you doing?
Good. How you doing, Roger?
Good. I like that picture of Ali over your shoulder there.
I appreciate it. Louisville
Yeah,
guy.
I got a great one of him and Bob Dylan in the '70s backstage at Madison Square Garden, kind of chopping
Wow.
it up together. So that's pride possession by the TV. Let me ask you this, and I'm not going to call it a renaissance, but what is your take on the resurgence of the running game in the league? I know the Eagles are doing it. The Patriots are really committed to that. The 49ers, I mean, I know it's kind of in Kyle Shanahan's DNA, but he's coming up with some crazy stuff. Like Deebo Samuel is a far tailback and then running, down the sidelines. And it seems to be something that the Bills aren't built for to stop. And with the Patriots, that play last week, I think it was a jet sweep to Kendrick Bourne, or maybe it was a short pass, but they're just a massively very, very good at assignment football, and especially blocking downfield in the second level and even the third level in that play. What do you think about the trend here? Because it seems like defenses like the Bills have gone a little bit lighter and faster to deal with like Kansas City and teams like that. And it seems like a lot of teams around the league said, okay, we're going to beef up front. And until you prove that you have the beef and you can fill the gaps to stop us, we're going to keep doing it. You see this trend like I do, or what do you think?
Yeah, and to me, and that's a great question. To me, everything's cyclical. So, like early in my career, the Patriots were obviously they were the most consistent franchise in the league. Well, the hardest thing to stop about them was their dual tight end sets with Hernandez and Gronk. So, teams drafted athletic linebackers, bigger safeties, guys that could cover those guys. You often had to play them in nickel personnel, so you maybe needed a bigger nickel player, you added a safety, whatever it may be. You built your team to stop the Patriots, especially if you were in the AFC, because that's who you had to beat to get to the Super Bowl. Well, the last 3 years, AFC Championship game, Kansas City Chiefs. And to stop the Kansas City Chiefs, you need more speed on your defense. You've got to be able to rush the passer. You got to be able to play man coverage on the outside. And so everyone got a little bit smaller. Everyone started playing nickel. And a lot of these high-powered offenses, shoot, a few years ago, the Patriots were a pretty high-powered offense. But so everyone got lighter to stop those. And then you see Derrick Henry at 250 pounds, and he can run over your defense. And I think everything comes in waves in this league. You also just, I think if some of those teams like Tennessee, they drafted Derrick Henry and then said, well, shoot, let's get really physical. And that models the kind of temperament of their head coach as well. But for the most part, you're playing to A, your personnel that you have and who's healthy, and then B, offensively that is, and then B, you're trying to catch whoever's at the top. Like this Bills defense is built to beat Kansas City, and they beat them earlier this year. Now you might have some trouble stopping the run if you're really never going to play base defense, which I think if you go back to that Indy game and Tremaine Edmonds is healthy, then maybe you put A.J. Klein on the field and get 3 linebackers on the field. With Tremaine Edmonds out, I don't know that you put Dotson Smith or any of those guys in the game in that situation. All that being said, it's a great question. Everything kind of goes cyclical in this league. If the Patriots, Titans, if it's a Patriots, Titans, AFC Championship game, God forbid, it would drive me nuts. But the Vrabel Belichick storylines would just be too much for me to even handle. But then you'll likely see teams start to get a little bit bigger again.
It is, and how does a team structurally through the draft and free agency create kind of a hybrid kind of team that can adjust and be a little bit ahead of the curve? Because now we're going to the more run oriented, where a lot of these teams are giving them trouble. You're committed to lighter and faster for the Kansas City offense and others like it. That's one thing that impresses me about Belichick. It really does, and always has, is he gets a lot of versatile guys. They can do a lot of different things. They can do what he asks them to do. How do you stay ahead of this as the organization? Like you said, it's cyclical. It could be 2 years from now. We're talking about, everyone's throwing 50 times a game. As an organization, I mean, how hard is it even possible to do that?
Yeah, I think it's possible, and that's another great question. I definitely think it's possible, and I'd like to hear Tyler weigh in on this as well. But I definitely think it's possible. Now, the longer you have a coach and a system in place, and you're drafting players to your system, and you get everybody that's kind of learning under the same umbrella, I think you can then build a team that's kind of a hybrid. If you're mixing back and forth between a 3-4 and a 4-3 and a Jim Schwartz wide 9 rush the edge and then back to a Pet and a Rex, whatever it may be, like, I think it's very hard to build a hybrid defense because you're not drafting under that same coaching staff the entire time. I think the Bills are honestly pretty close. They're not far off. Now, when you have a 285, 90-pound defensive tackle in Ed Oliver, who's actually playing really well, he doesn't add a whole lot of size up there. When you're out your nose guard, Starla Tulele, and you only have one of those guys who's like truly physically imposing. Like I said this recently on One Bills Live, but if I was looking at the Bills defense, and I understand I played center, so I kind of look inside out, but if I'm looking at the Bills defense, the two most physically imposing players on that defense are Starla Tulele and Tremaine Edmonds. They're both out in the indie game. Like, those are your two guys that, because Star can actually rush the passer pretty well as well. And so those are your two guys who, Tremaine 6'5", 250. Star 6'4", he's listed at like 305. Nuh-uh. I've stood next to him. That dude's bigger than 305, I'm telling you. And that's like Wilfork when he was always listed at 325. I blocked him. He wasn't 325 pounds. That being said, I think the Bills are pretty close. I think if Vernon Butler was more of a playmaker at his size, then you could put Starr and Butler on the field. And that's why you brought him in at 330 pounds, because you thought, okay, at times we can put those two D tackles in there. But when you miss in free agency on a Butler, that really hurts you. And I say that, and I'm kind of piggybacking what Leslie Frazier said about Butler a couple weeks ago, and he was inactive the last game. And you got guys that are close on the edge, but I think, Rousseau's got to get a little bit more meat on his frame to where you got guys that can both defend the pass and the run.
No, I think you're right, Eric. I mean, it's hard to even blame Buffalo, and I know I've been pretty critical of like the way they're built, but I do get it. It kind of even started 2-3 years ago when they trade Wyatt Teller, who we just talked to for a story, where it's like, all right, you think that the game is going to backyard football, improvisational quarterbacks, all the second reaction stuff. I mean, you watch Mahomes and Allen and Kyler Murray and what all these guys are doing. Like, that's the direction. You want to go lighter, faster, more athletic. But I guess that's why the NFL is king. It's like there's smart offensive minds that are like, all right, fuck it. We're just going to unleash a 250-pound running back and run it down your throat. And there are a handful of teams that, like, you look at what New England did now last spring, and it's like Belichick saw this coming before everybody else. Like, oh, I'll just get by on a rookie contract at quarterback, and I'll just go sign all these dogs all over the place and win that way. So we'll see who's in the AFC Championship game. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me still if Josh Allen goes out there Monday, regardless of the weather, and goes nuts, like Mahomes is kind of doing too. But I think there is something to it. Like, I don't know if the Bills are really built inside out to like go into that back alley brawl with the Patriots or the Titans when they're at full strength, those kind of teams.
Right, and I think you're spot on. I think, and go all the way back, Roger. And one, I got to ask you: were you drinking water out of that mason jar or moonshine? Because that was a heck of a chug.
Water. I got to drive the wife and her friend around. She drove me and my buddy the Miami game, and she hung out and drank water and coffee. Well, we didn't. Put it that way.
Gotcha.
So I'm returning.
I was
going
gonna
to
say that was
tonight.
a heck of a swig, and where I'm from, generally out of a mason jar, something clear, and it's not water. But anyway, I digress. I'll say this though: a good defensive line and a couple good corners is probably about as hybrid as you can get as far as being under the salary cap. You know, you look at New England, Pittsburgh, like teams that are consistent over the years. It's like, do you have guys that can rush the passer and are disruptive, and then you got a couple guys that can cover on the outside? Then you could probably beat that hybrid.
With that in mind, Eric, do you think that the Bills D line is, up to that challenge? Because I look at the D line and I think that's, if anything, I'm critical of Brandon Beane. It's how he's handled the defensive line. He's put a lot of assets, and it's just kind of, okay. They're just kind of okay. And for all the assets that they've spent on it, I think that's his black mark, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easier said than done, but
Yeah.
and those guys get really expensive, especially if you bring them in free agency. But like in my mind, give me one Aaron Donald as opposed to 8 pretty good players. Like when I look across the Bills' defensive line, I think that there's a lot of good football players,
Yeah.
a lot of good ones, and there's not one that you have to truly game plan around. Ed Oliver's actually getting pretty close. I think he makes some bonehead plays at time, and I don't know that his awareness is great. Like, I want Ed to get away from, like, when you see the quarterback throw, like, dive out of the way. Like, quit getting roughing the passer penalties. But I think Ed's actually getting pretty close to a guy that you game plan around. But other than that, there's nobody on the Bills D line where you're like, okay, if it's 3rd and 10 and they're definitely not blitzing, okay, we have to slide the line to TJ Watt, Aaron Donald, you name them. Like, the Bills don't have that guy. Now, there's plenty of teams that don't. I think the Bills, what they do have is they have 8 guys and they could roll them in and they stay fresh, and maybe through really 9 guys. But when you, over the course of a season, including the playoffs, maybe that pays off for them because they have so many quality players. But I do think it hurts them at times that there's not one stud up there.
Yeah.
That's where it might have been smart, in free agency, just because they haven't drafted. I mean, they've drafted okay on the D line, but there's some questionable picks in there. Like, just say, all right, we know that this dude is going to get 12 to 15 sacks. Let's just pay for him, because there were a lot of pass rushers they could have gotten. I know it's all hindsight, but you're right. There isn't that one player that really strikes a lot of fear in you, and they've got a lot of money and they've got a lot of high picks, so they're going to need somebody to bust out. Anytime I hear Ed Oliver, I just think of him. I don't know what heartbreaking playoff loss it was. I don't know if it was Houston or Kansas City, when the plane landed and he sticks his head out of the window and he's like a triumphant hero returns home. I'm like, I get it. It's got to be nice to see the fans, but he's pretty happy a day after this excruciating loss. Come on, Ed. What's going on here?
Right, I hear you, and that would rub me pretty raw too. And I don't know him personally, but just for a young guy, I think it probably hurts him that he never got to like truly play with a Kyle Williams. I don't know what type of guy Star is, but he hasn't been a captain since he's been in Buffalo. Maybe he's not like that guy to like really push Ed along. But yeah, to me, when you like our one top 10 draft pick along that defensive line is Ed. Like, that's got to be the guy that teams have to game plan around.
Hey, Eric, question about the offensive line. Cordy Ford seems like he's just been really struggling like the last couple of years. I just wanted to know, and this is just my theory, and it could be completely wrong, and maybe you can add to this. Switching him from tackle, where I felt in college that's where he made his bones. That's why he got drafted, to guard, might have been a mistake. And I don't know if and I know you came in the league, you were a guard. They had you at guard for a couple of years. Then they moved you to center. Like, do you at all feel that could be a situation for why he's been struggling is for the switch? And maybe if your own experience, like, do you like how was that switch for you? And couldn't that be a difficult transition to make, from a guy going from tackle to guard?
It's definitely tough. I think it's easier going from outside in than it is inside out. I had this conversation with Jeff Saturday. It'll post this upcoming Wednesday. He was on my podcast. But we had that conversation because he played guard early in his career. It's harder for centers to go out than it is for tackles to come into guard. It's if you kind of have that anchor in you and then you move in, generally you have faster feet at tackle. Everything kind of just, you get them in a phone booth, it feels easier in pass protection. That being said, I think some of Cody Ford's issues are, or one of his biggest is this year, is he seems slow-footed. Like he's not reacting well. And look, the Bills' offense at times is not very O-line friendly. And that's fine. Like you have great weapons on the outside. You play to the strength of your talent. We talked about it earlier with defense. Offensively, if you're the Bills, like, yes, you want to be effective in the run game and keep teams honest, but between your 4 receivers and Dawson Knox and Josh Allen, like, spread the ball out. But when teams know you're passing the ball, that's a tough assignment in the NFL. And Cody Ford's been exposed because he's not a great pass protector. He's more of a road grader, and it just hasn't worked well. Now he is coming off of a knee injury last year. I could tell you that even when you're on the field coming off of surgery and a serious knee injury, sometimes you're not always 100% out there, even if he's not on the injury report. So I don't know if this is the end of the road for Cody Ford in Buffalo. It sure seems like it. But, Cody Ford's quality depth right now, and he's on a rookie contract. There's a lot of teams in this league that wish they had Cody Ford backing up their guard spots.
Second round pick, though, I mean, that would be a pretty big miss. You're expecting more.
And they traded up for him.
That's right.
Yeah.
Forgot about that.
I announced the pick.
Did you really? You announced that one
down in Nashville.
So we got to blame you. I mean, you were like the last line of defense.
No, I could have called it off. No, and honestly, I mean, linemen are tough to project nowadays. Coming out of college, because the offenses don't look all that similar. Defensive linemen aren't that good. Guys are coming out younger and younger. It's just, it's a lot tougher.
Wyatt Teller was saying that even like weight training has changed. Like he was at Virginia Tech and had kind of an old school strength coach. So like they're throwing around heavy weights, power lifts. But he had heard kind of like looking around the landscape with all these spread offenses, like even the way they're sculpting and building offensive line, it's more for speed in that kind of game. So it's, I don't know, again, it kind of creates that opening for a team to punch you in the mouth and play that kind of way.
Yeah, I'll say this. I've seen some guys come in from big schools, and you can tell that they don't train that hard in the weight room anymore.
Is
your
that right?
Ohio State, your Clemsons, like those guys are big-time recruits, and they don't want to be bossed around. They might not work that hard in the weight room, and then they come to the NFL, and the Bills strength staff, like, we still push some weight. And Ciano came from Georgia Tech. He's still there with the Bills. He does a great job, and he pushes you pretty hard, which the Bills have been great from an injury standpoint, and I think he does a good job. And so some of those guys are in for a little culture shock when they get to the NFL, and it's even harder than they were in college, because oftentimes you think it'd be the opposite. Like, oh, when you're young, they train you real hard, get you to the league, and then it's kind of just staying where you're at. Some of those guys are in for a wake-up call.
Eric, I got a question about locker rooms. You've obviously been in a bunch of them. Has there ever been a moment where you felt like a coach lost the locker room in your career? Like in terms, and like, how does that happen? Like, because you always hear it, like media people will talk about fans like, oh, he lost the locker room. Like, has that happened to you while as a Bill, whether it was Vic Duran or it could have been an assistant coach? I don't know. But like, were there moments you felt like, yeah, like this dude lost the locker room and it's a disaster or anything like that?
No, not necessarily. And that's a great question. Not necessarily. We probably didn't give coaches long enough to stick around for them to lose the locker room truly. You know what I mean? Where we were like, why do we keep this guy? The Bills cut ties pretty quick while I was there. I had now 2 were interims, but I had 7 head coaches in 9 years. And so none of them truly lost the locker room. Now, not everybody was a crowd favorite, and I'll say probably Marone because he kind of came from that Coughlin tree. But that doesn't mean he lost the locker room. He was more get under your skin a little bit, call you out. Everybody else was kind of a, hey, we're all pros, we're all in this together. You call me by my first name, like we're all men here. Like we're gonna treat each other like men. And now there's accountability, and like Sean McDermott's not gonna dog cuss you like a college coach might, or your high school coach. Heck, it looks like we're all about of similar generation here. I'm sure we've all been cussed out by a coach in our life that nowadays would be a Twitter sensation. But like most coaches in the NFL are like, hey, we're pros. So I was talking to Sean McDermott. Like Sean McDermott is great with accountability, but he enforces accountability based upon playing time. You look at Isaiah McKenzie, Vernon Butler, Zach Moss, all healthy scratches for the last game. Like that's how Sean McDermott gets his message across. They get their message across because they might bring more guys, definitely more than any other staff I've been around, bringing guys in for workouts where they come and get changed in your locker room on Tuesdays, and you see the guys that are trying out for your job. Like there's a lot of accountability there. And,
really?
Oh yeah. I mean,
a lot of guys in on those.
That's the reality of the league. There's always someone ready to take your spot if you're not stepping up. So, when I was in college, honestly, we went from Bobby Petrino to Steve Craigthorpe, and everyone loved Craigthorpe at first because he was so cool. And then we sucked, and everyone's like, well, maybe this dude, maybe it was more fun when Bobby Petrino was here and we were getting cussed out every day and practices were grueling because we actually won. Like, maybe that's what we needed. And so that was probably as close as I've seen someone lose a locker room.
Just a question to dovetail on the previous question there. What would you say? Now you've been in the media for a few years now, but when in your playing days, what is the percentage of accuracy that the media had describing a team's psychological state? Like they said, oh well, the coach has lost the team, or this team doesn't seem confident. Did you guys used to sit there and if you did listen to this, just laugh at each other and like they don't know what the hell they're talking about? Or were you saying like, wow, that's kind of close? What would you say the percentage would be?
I'm trying to think back to a specific time, but I would say generally where there's smoke, there's fire. And Ty knows this, like a lot of really high media members generally have players on the inside, or they have assistant GMs that want you to put them on their top 10 GM candidates at the end of the year. So they'll give you the real scoop, and maybe it's dramatized a little bit, but generally there's some validity there. I'm trying to think back. I mean, honestly, we weren't that good throughout my time with the Bills, so there wasn't like that much to report on, if that makes sense.
I thought during the Rex years, that's when there was a lot of drama.
2015 was crazy.
Like Ty's got a lot. Like he's got a notebook full of stuff I remember he wrote about. Like just be like some infighting and like not infighting. That's kind of over dramatic, but I kind of remember that being like where players and coaches like they were like leaked, like stuff was getting out, like this coach, like Greg Roman, like the whole thing with Greg Roman, like he got fired, and I remember that happening. I was like, I didn't understand that at all. I mean, you were there. What? Actually, yeah. What happened with Greg Roman? Like he got canned after they scored like 30 points.
I know, and that's one time that. But like Rex was so great, and Rex could sell it. If Rex wasn't in football and media, Rex could be the best salesman in the country. I mean, he's like, if Rex hopped on this Zoom right now, like me included, put myself on mute and just listen to Rex. I mean, he's got that gift. So he can kind of sell anything. I think there was some, him and Greg were going to butt heads. Greg wasn't Rex's hire. That was the Pagulas and management's hire. Like they said, Rex, we want to bring you in, but we want Greg Roman as our OC, so we're going to make this work. Anthony Lynn was Rex's guy, so like as much as maybe we didn't agree with it, it wasn't like we didn't see where he was coming from. Like, hey, we're 0-2. Like, at least let me lose with my guys if I can make the decision here. And when you promote Anthony Lynn, it wasn't like we didn't have, like, A. Lynn is a great leader, a great coach. So we had him on staff. So it made it a little bit better.
Man, that was a fun year, though. I mean, maybe not as a player because it starts with that Colts win. I mean, remember Guinness Book of World Records? They came to that Patriots game. It was like the expectations were through the roof. And Rex was just great to cover because it was like he let you guys be yourselves. So there was no just vague cliche. It just wasn't a bunch of dribble, and there was open locker room, which was nice too. But the highs were really high and the lows were really low. It felt like every week, like even at the press conference, you could see on Rex's face, like he could be like just ready to run through a wall, or he would just be depressed. And you can see why the pendulum swung back to McDermott, who's just going to stay right there week to week. And
Yeah, but I'll say
boring was
this.
kind of needed. I don't know.
Yeah, and if you're looking at it from the Bills' perspective, like, okay, we got to sell tickets. I'll never forget, we had the longest playoff drought in all of professional sports that we were playing in, and we set a season ticket holder record in the same stadium that the early 90s Bills played in the same stadium with more expensive seats. Like, that's what a Rex Ryan effect can do, and bring in free agents. And, you know, you got Russ Brandon who could sell ketchup popsicles. You know, it's like they could build it all up, and they did a good job of it.
I'll say this about that week 2 game against New England. And I remember, and it was great for the media and the national media, local media as well. And he's saying, we're not afraid of the Patriots. Some teams are down 7-0 when the bus shows up with the Patriots in them. I just remember him talking and talking. I'm like, okay, this is all well and good. And I'm like, but this is really not the team to talk about. When you act, it's great to sell tickets, but getting on the field. I'll never forget, I think it was Brady on Wednesday or his media availability day, and they asked him about it. I just remember him just looking at the reporter going, yeah, we know where Orchard Park is. We'll be there on Sunday. And I looked at my wife and said, this is not going to turn out well.
I'll say this, and I'm with you, and I see your point 100%, Roger, but Rex was trying to instill a confidence in a team that didn't have any confidence and came from Marone and Gailey and Jerron that weren't inspiring. And so Rex was trying to, like, basically instill confidence in a group that didn't yet know how to win. And I'll say this, if anything, we were just way too charged up for that game. Like, we had 3 personal fouls in the first quarter. Like, Rex basically had us like, we are going to take over the division now, and we're going to do it with physicality, and we're going to, like, literally beat the crap out of these guys. And, like, I think some dudes, like, and I'm buddies with Aaron, and I'm not saying this behind his back, but, like, I think Aaron Williams, like, could not handle that. Like, he was ready to kill somebody that day. Like, we had a bunch of guys that were, like, literally out there for blood. And, like, I was charged up, too. Like, I'm trying to, like, finish someone on every single play. We were just, like, we didn't have our minds right. So, basically, through my podcast, I brought on a bunch of, like, personal development guys or performance coaches in sports because I'm fascinated by, like, the mind in sports and all this. Like, I had Michael Gervais come on my podcast, and he said that athletes operate perfectly in, like, a 5 to 7 intensity level depending on who you are, because anything higher than that, you can't function properly. Anything lower than that, and you're not in the moment enough. We were, like, all redlining, which was a really bad recipe, to where you're not making great decisions out there.
Yeah, that's funny. It reminds me, I think it was Super Bowl 23, I think, with the 49ers and the Bengals. And the great Tim Crumry, who wound up, I think, coaching with the Bills for a while as defensive line, he snapped his leg in the first quarter, and he blames the adrenaline he had going into that game. And he said it was so over the top that now somehow he'll explain it better than I can. Somehow that contributed to his broken leg. So it's interesting you say that.
Yeah, that is. All right, I got time for probably one more.
Awesome, Eric. Thanks for doing this too, man. We appreciate it. That's such a great point too on the adrenaline. I've heard that too. Like, even these UFC, MMA guys, they are like at a 4 or 5. They're so calm where you think they'd be at 10s. But yeah, I won't monopolize this. If anybody else has a question,
Yeah,
fire
I'll take
away.
one real quick. Eric, I was wondering, what's it like to eat like an O lineman in the NFL? Like, were you just pounding food all the time? And like, how many chicken wings could you eat at a time, or how many beers could you drink back in your prime of doing it?
It's a great question. Chicken wings. I think the most I ever ate with like one sitting was 50 at Hooters in college, and I mean, just felt miserable. But I was generally like a 10 and 10 guy, like get like 20 wings and some fries or whatever else, and then like 10 and 10. So I'd do like something spicy or something sweeter. I mean, beer's plenty. I mean, light beer. Like to me, like light beers, you could just drink like infinity of them. Eventually, you're not drinking them fast enough to get even more drunk, which is like I I'm wearing a Miller Lite ugly Christmas sweater to our party tonight that we're going to. Miller Lite just sent me it. Actually dropped it off on the porch. That's how loyal I am to them. But that being said, like if I'm having one or two, like I'll do a cocktail, an IPA or something. But like if we're going all day, it's Miller Lite for me. I feel bad not saying Blue Light. Blue Light had been the sponsor of my last two ugly Christmas sweaters. This year Miller Lite stepped up, and I didn't even get one from Blue Light. So
Did they supply the beer though for the Miller Lite tonight?
no, but they hook it up. Like we do a big summer party, and they hook us up, and I don't mind sporting their cause because they've hooked us up plenty. But when Blue Light would send them, they would have what would they send? Four tall boys. They would send like four tall boys down. It was awesome.
Yeah.
If you're
Eric,
gonna be
real
a
quick,
show for something, be a show for beer. That's a good way to live.
right, Eric, I know you got to go, but I just real quick, I gotta get your impressions on because your storied college career, the whole Brian Kelly situation in Notre Dame, walking out on his team, going to LSU. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, money talks, and if Notre Dame wanted to fire him, they wouldn't mind fire him before the bowl game. So it stinks. It's part of the business. College football truly is the wild, wild west right now. I mean, these NIL deals, there's no hardly policing them at all. I just hope these kids are like withdrawing the taxes so they can pay those at the end of the year and all that.
Right.
But that being said, I thought him getting on the microphone and faking a Cajun accent, I mean, that is just classic. And I have a buddy that you could use some deductive reasoning if you really tried hard enough. He played for Brian Kelly, ended up tearing his hamstring off the bone before he left for the NFL, fell to the second round, and he blames Brian Kelly for that. And I haven't heard a lot of great things. He coached in Cincinnati, where I'm originally from. Haven't heard a lot of great things about him. That being said, great track record. But, I mean, these college coaches are going wherever they want. These TV deals are getting enormous. I mean, ACC Network just got picked up by Comcast, so then every ACC school is getting an extra $7 million a year now, and that's just the ACC. I mean, it's just getting bigger and bigger, and these coaches are going to get more and more money. And when you realize, especially in college sports, coaches and their staff truly mattered. I mean, USC will be likely top 5 to start the year next year with Lincoln Riley, and they would have been maybe ranked without him, and you can pay him to come.
Unbelievable. Eric, that was
when someone said when Tomlin said, I'm definitely not interested in USC. I got a plenty good job here. I saw someone was like, someone asked Tomlin, would he do it for 15 mil?
Exactly. Well, holy crap, that was great, Eric. Thanks so much for hanging out, going longer, and I don't know if you have a secret, but like I said, every time we see, I feel like you've lost another 10 pounds. So how you doing it?
I will say this, and Derek, you asked about eating. I still can tie one on eating and drinking. So for me, I pretty much prescribe to intermittent fasting 6 to 7 days a week. At least take off 12 hours from my last meal. So if we get Taco Bell on the way home tonight, then at least 12 hours from then, but generally 12 to 18 hours, and catch a workout during that time. And then that kind of gives me the freedom to occasionally crush wings and beers or whatever. But and I don't beat myself up about it too much. But I mean, probably 80 or 90% of the time I'm eating pretty clean. I'm not drinking my people that are sucking down Gatorades and whatever else that have a bunch of calories in them, sodas. That's an easy way to pack them on. Which, I mean, I know how to pack them on because I had to try to keep weight on for so long. Now, getting the last 40 off was work, but going from 310 to 285, I got that off pretty quick.
It's remarkable. Great advice, man. Well, have fun at the party, and thanks so much for making time. I mean, you've got a zillion things going on, so really cannot thank you enough for doing this.
My pleasure.
Thanks,
I'll
Eric.
look forward to it,
Appreciate
buddy.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yep. Good hanging. Great questions tonight, too.
Thanks.
Definitely.